Please welcome Jill Vialet.
So I want to start by playing a game. So if we could bring up the house lights all the way up. I'm a firm believer that there is a good game for every space. And given this space, we're going to play a game called Stand Up. And the way Stand Up works is it's very low tech. Stand Up works, I'm going to make a series of statements. And can you bring them all the way up so I can see everybody too and we can all see each other? So the way Stand Up works is I'm going to make a series of statements. And if that statement is true for you, you're going to stand up, you're going to pause, you're going to look around, and then you're going to sit back down. Okay? If for some reason standing up isn't working for you, you're very much at the top and you're worried about toppling down, you could just make an upward sweeping gesture to signify your participation. Okay? So let's get going. If you are a parent, stand up. Right on. Okay, sit back down. We're going to be doing this a bunch, so you know. Okay? If you are left-handed, stand up. Wow, that's a high percentage of left-handed people. Go ahead and sit back down. If you have sought elected office, stand up. Now, if you've also run for student government, come on now. No student government people, there we go. I wasn't picking on him. Sit back down. If you would describe your relationship to caffeine as an addiction, stand up. There we go. All right. If you have ever performed in a musical, stand up. Wow. Wow. That's surprising. I'm impressed. Okay. Sit back down. If you memorized a poem from start to finish in your teen years that you can still recite, stand up. He's there. That's right. Wow. All right, last one. If you have ever owned a Donna Summers album, stand up. All right, there we go. So I play that game first to establish that this is an extraordinary crowd. I'm really particularly heartened by the number of Donna Summers lovers, too. I always feel like you're going to get a warm reception if there are a good number of Donna Summer fans in the audience. But I also play, because I'm wondering if you noticed how when we started to play the game that there was a shift. That you know how that busy brain that we all have going all the time, that monologue that's saying, oh, damn, I forgot to pick up my dry cleaning, or, oh, I meant to send that email to Tony before I left the office, or how am I possibly going to drop the kids off and be at that meeting at 8:30 tomorrow morning? You know, that constant thing, that when you start to play the game, that busy brain really quiets down. That once you start playing, you get into that sort of play, you make that cognitive shift into that play space, you're suddenly much more in the present. And you're much more aware of the people around you. You're checking out the guy who can still recite the poem from his high school years. You're thinking about what I'm saying in a much more intent way. You're really hanging on what I'm saying, because it might apply to you. There might even be a physiological response, right? You might feel your pulse quicken slightly, not in a nervous or stressed out way or super anxious, but just in a slightly more awake, engaged kind of way. So that play state is, not surprisingly, a state that's really conducive to learning. I spend a lot of time out in public elementary schools all across the country, and unfortunately, that's not a lot of what I'm seeing when I'm out in the schools. When I'm out in the schools, what I'm seeing is a pretty singular focus on achievement, on test scores. And so the folks that I meet out in the schools, they're really, I think their intent in really focusing on achievement is good. I think they believe that by focusing on achievement, they're going to get to a place of better teaching and learning. But the problem is the people in the schools are being held accountable to a very singular metric around standardized tests. And it's like the old saying goes, people don't do what you expect, they do what you inspect. And so by virtue of building an educational system that's so focused on these measurable outcomes, we've seen a subtle shift in the schools away from learning and towards knowledge acquisition. Now, the implications of this are pretty huge, right? And one of them is that while it might have been with the best of intentions, achievement can sometimes lead to really a less of an emphasis on children's development than you'd want to see. And the lack of opportunities for play is a great example of that. But it's not just about learning. Another way that having less play in schools manifests is that kids are given fewer and fewer opportunities to develop the skills they need to become change makers. So change makers is a term that I borrowed from Bill Drayton, And as many of you know, Bill is the founder of Ashoka, and he's the person who came up with the idea, the term social entrepreneur. Now, Bill's obsessed with trends, and so he has been looking a lot at what it would take to build a world in which everyone was a change maker. And he's noted that there's a real trend that almost all the fellows had these experiences as kids where they were able to make a difference, where they were able to make a change. And he's pulled out really 4 social skills that he sees as being absolutely essential to being a change maker. And they're empathy, leadership, teamwork, and then this experience itself of being a change maker, that taking creativity and translating it into action. Not surprisingly, Bill's very critical of an educational system that's really focused on knowledge acquisition, because that's not really conducive to those four social skills being developed. And happily for me, an educational system that really emphasizes play really is. George Bernard Shaw wrote that reasonable people try to adapt themselves to the world, while unreasonable people try to adapt the world to themselves. I can do that again. Reasonable people adapt themselves to the world, while unreasonable people attempt to adapt the world to themselves. Therefore, all progress depends on unreasonable people. When I first started working on making Playworks happen, I was fully in touch with my unreasonable self. I saw that recess in a lot of Oakland schools wasn't going well. I knew that recess had been absolutely key to my happiness and success as a kid, and I believed that I could make a difference. And so, not through any kind of conscious choice, I just started making it happen. I totally just found myself doing it, and I cared on a cellular level. But Playworks has grown over the years, not because of my unreasonableness, but because the young adults who've come to work for us go out into the playgrounds, and they, through the power of play, discover themselves as change makers. And really, there's nothing that makes me prouder than the fact that there's now a legion of unreasonable 20-somethings out there who now share my vision that one day every kid in America is going to get to play every day. So we didn't start out going national. We just started local as a Bay Area program. But about 6 years ago, I was elected an Ashoka Fellow, and we started to go national. So we started getting all these calls about people who wanted to learn about what we were doing and wondered if we would come and talk to them about how it was and would we come open in their city. And so we got an invitation to go back to Baltimore. And we were invited to go to the Johns Hopkins Summer Learning Institute. So we decided to make a whole trip out of it, and 4 of the staff, myself plus 3 others, went out. And one of the guys who came with us is a guy named Lamar. Now, Lamar is about 6'3", African-American, 240, never been out of Oakland before. He's legally blind. He can't drive, but he's magic on the playground, right? And he also has an outside shot, which, given the fact that he's legally blind, doesn't make a lot of sense, but, you just got to believe. And he's an extraordinary guy. So he comes with me, and we break up into 2 groups. And so I go with Lamar to this one school in Baltimore to meet with the principal. The other 2 go off to speak at another school. And we're sitting in the office of the principal in the school, and we're waiting to talk to the principal. And I turn to Lamar, and I say, Lamar, you want to do the pitch? I mean, when you go in, you can describe the program. I mean, you've actually done it. I just made it up. I've actually never done it. You do it. And he's like, no way. You talk. I'm just going to sit there and listen. I want to hear how you sell it. It's all you. I'm just going to be completely quiet. And I say, okay. So we walk into the principal's office, and it's just like you remember, right? So there's the big chair and the big desk, and then there are 2 little chairs. And you walk in, and there is the whole thing is set up to make you feel small, right? And so we sit down in the little chair, and Lamar's a big dude, and he's sitting in the little chair, right? And so I go into my spiel. I start talking about how Playworks works, how we put 1 person in each school, and how they're out in the yard for all the recesses, and how they work with the classroom teachers, and we do a junior coach program, and the kids get put in charge of teaching other kids rock, paper, scissors, and after school, and how we do the leagues, and parents are involved, and principals nodding, listening, nodding. Good. Nodding. I'd say how it costs us about $55,000 per school to run the program, how each school pays $23,500, and going on. Get to the end of my pitch. He nods, and he says, God, it sounds like a great program. It just would never work for us. And I go, huh. And I say, is it because of the money? Because, a lot of times it's because of the money. And he said, no, we don't have recess. We haven't had recess for 5 years. And so up until this point, Lamar has been absolutely mum. Not a peep from the guy, right? But he can't stop himself at this point. He leans forward. He says, I'm sorry, excuse me, but when But when the kids finish up lunch, right, and they go outside to play, what happens then? The principal's kind of startled, right, because Lamar hasn't said a word. He'd sort of forgotten he was there. He turns to Lamar and says, no, we don't have recess. The kids stay inside the cafeteria. And Lamar says, well, but what about when, the teachers take the kids out for break, the first graders and the second graders, like when they go out during the day to run around and get some air and play. The principal looks at me, and he looks at Lamar, and he's like, no, we don't have recess. We haven't had recess in 5 years. Our kids don't know how to play. And at this point, Lamar looks at me, and he looks at the principal, and he says, could I take the kids out for 10 minutes of recess today? And the principal shakes his head. He's like, no way. And right then, you should have seen Lamar just dug in, and he summoned his full unreasonable self, and he leans forward. He said, no, let me take them out today. Let me show you. I can show you. Let me show you. And he looks at me, we can wait. And I'm like, we can wait. All right. So an hour and 20 minutes later, I find myself striding into this cafeteria that is about the size, it's like, imagine like 5 rows up and from the stairway to the stairway, right? About 120 fourth and fifth graders, just a cacophony, right? It's insane, the level of like, right? And you have to picture there are 2 doors, right? And there are these 2 lunch ladies at each door. And they just look scary and mean and cranky, and they are at the door, and they're there. And they're in full like lunch lady garb, too. Can you picture them? So Lamar strides to the middle of the cafeteria, and he claps. And a few kids look at him, and the lunch leaders are like, red alert, what's going on? So he does it again. And a couple of kids, like against their will, look at him and they go. But then he does it one more time. He goes, and the entire room goes, and the entire room goes, and there's total silence, right? And so Lamar says, hi, hey, I'm Coach Lamar. I'm here. And the kids look at him, they're like, he goes, what kind of welcome is that? Let's try that again. He says, hi, I'm Coach Lamar. And the kids all go, hi, Coach Lamar. And they're just like, what is going on? He says, I'm visiting from California, which is code for I am criminally insane in Baltimore. And he says, I'm visiting from California, and your principal has said that I get to take you out for 10 minutes of recess today. The kids are like, whoa! He says, but I need you to show them that you can cooperate. So I'm going to ask you to do 3 things. He said, okay? First thing is, I need you to finish up eating up lunch. Second thing is, I need you to clean up your area. And then I need you to line up by class quietly in an organized way. So boom, boom, boom. The kids are like cleaned up, they eat up, they line up. And 4 minutes later, we're out on the yard. So Lamar circles them all up. He goes over the rules. He breaks them into groups of 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. He said, okay, now we're going to break into 3 groups. I'm going to take the one group over here. We're going to play Band-Aid tag. Jill's going to take the 2s. She's going to play Rockstar. And I'm like, I am? But I'll play Rockstar with y'all at the break so you can see how it goes. And he says, and the threes, you're going to go with your teachers, and I've talked to them, and you're going to be on the structure. And there are 3 rules on the structure. 1 is no running up the slide. 2 is treat each other with love. And 3 is a kind of double rule, no bleeding and no throwing up. So the kids are like, really? No bleeding? No throwing up? Okay. So break out 1, 2, 3s. We do our game. I teach them how to play Rockstar. He's got them going. They're running around. They're having so much fun. He claps again. At the end of the 10 minutes, they all clap. He circles them back up. He says, I want everybody to go around and say 1 word about how it was. And the kids are like, fun, great. And then, a couple of kids say, throw up. But, mostly they're like into it. And he says, all right, that was great, but I need one more favor from you. I said, I need you to show the teachers and the principal that you can go off the yard with the same quiet and organization and coordination that you came in. Can you do that for me? And they're like, yeah. And one kid's like, when are you coming back? He's like, I'm going to be back next year, but I need you to show them that you can do this. And the kids filed out just like a dream, right? And so you should see, so the principal looks at me, he's like, we should talk, all right? And Lamar is looking so pleased with himself, right? He's just chuffed. He's like, yes. And all of a sudden I look over, and there come the lunch ladies, right? Running across the blacktop, heaving bosom, whoa, and they hug Lamar, and they gave him so much love, and it was this great visual. So we launched there at that school that next year. There are a couple of things I love about that story. I love how the kids were moved so quickly from a behavior that was totally unacceptable to a behavior that was great. I love the lunch ladies. But one thing that I don't get to talk about that often that seems so important is how incredible it was that Lamar stepped up in that moment, right? I mean, nothing about the power dynamic supported that, right? I mean, he was there. I'm his boss's boss. The principal's totally intimidating, and the dude's in the little chair, right? And yet, in that moment, he had so much empathy for the kids, and he knew without a shadow of a doubt that he could make a difference. And so he summoned his full unreasonable self, and he made a difference. And that's the kind of world I want to live in. I want to live in a world where people see problems, they see creative solutions, and they know for a fact that they can make a difference. And then, based on that, they take action, and the world is a better place. I could stand here and tell you stories about all the hundreds of staff who do this every day, who found their incredible power as a change maker through play. But I think what I want to leave you with is the thought that while it's easy to dismiss play and recess as this sort of extra, this sort of frivolous thing, nothing could be further from the truth. It is absolutely essential that we make sure that every kid in America gets to play every day, because that's what's going to take for them to develop the social skills they need to take the initiative, to drive their own destiny, and to ultimately become the change makers that we so desperately need them to be. So I look forward to playing with you all at the break. Thanks very much.